Hello Internet, Taliesin here. I just wanted to pop on before we started to apologise that this isn't an episode of the weekly reset. Evie and Anirin and I unfortunately had some really important and unexpected life stuff that popped up this weekend, which means we weren't able to finish it. We did actually get a load of footage done, including for the opening skit, so I'll probably put that together and put it on for patrons. But it gives me the ideal opportunity to introduce to you a new sort of revamped series that we used to do quite a lot called Taliesin Talks, where we edit together very interesting conversations we may have had on our stream over on Twitch. And I promise this would only be absolutely the very most interesting conversations, all killer no filler, to present them to you as Taliesin and sometimes Evitel as well, chatting about that subject. And I thought this would be a very interesting one to start. This week, of course, we had Tazavesh, the mythic mega dungeon, open, and within that dungeon there are loose pages of an expedition journal put together by a particularly adventurous broker, which delve into the secrets of the first ones and how they may have created the entire world of Warcraft cosmos. It was a really interesting conversation to have on stream. This isn't a format we'll be using super regularly, but for now, I hope you enjoy Taliesin Talks, the secret journal of Tazavesh, the first ones, and the creation of the universe. Nothing important, you know. The cosmos and the origins of the World of Warcraft universe. The notes are a series of expedition reports written by a broker named Al-Farim, who wished to access the sepulchre of the first ones and seemed interested in determining the origins of the known universe. We're gonna fucking read them, just so you know. Here we go. I have no means to convey the tenure of my labour upon this quest, for how can time be measured in search of such a place? Surely the sepulchre of the first ones exists beyond any measure that one... Okay, so they're just looking for the sepulchre, that's fine. When we finally discovered a tangible clue to the location of that sacred place after so many ages of speculation, I began my work with their full confidence. Is he trying to trick us? My gifts for deciphering the inscrutable had deservedly earned me an impeccable reputation. How many ancient codes had I broken? How many lost tongues had I translated? No secret was beyond my grasp. They all knew this and had reaped the profits of my genius. And yet here, so close to achieving our goals, I faltered. Yes, I admit, for the first time I faced a challenge so daunting that I doubted my ability to overcome it. Al-Farim, the fallible. They snickered in ill-concealed whispers, but who among them fared better? None. I assure you, the complexity of the glyphs alone was... Well, let me say, it felt like an eternity passed before I grasped the first inkling of what they represented. The others came and went. They brought in helpers and apprentices they claimed would aid me. None lasted. None proved worthy. They tried to tell me I should stop, that they had found another to take up the work, but I refused to leave. I knew who it was they planned to send, and I had vowed that she would never again usurp my position. I was lost in the glyphs. The geometry, every path seemed to curve in upon itself. Nothing made sense until it did. When at last the realization struck me, I swear to you that reality itself seemed to melt away. I saw visions of the unimaginable, sights I could never hope to convey in mere words. When I became conscious of my surroundings again, I saw the others staring down, mocking my sprawled limbs. It did not matter. I had found the truth. At last. Understand, despite this being the most wondrous revelation of my storied career, I stand upon the merest precipice of understanding. The language of the first one seems to shift and grow as I find greater depths within it. I have no doubt that further meanings will reveal themselves as the glyphs and geometry of the fractal tongue become more known to me. So, please consider the chapters ahead. Oh my god, this is the intro. Okay, let's not dawdle. Enough preamble. Read now the greatest discoveries of our time. The dawn of all things. Now you're talking. It is no small irony that the first specimens of their language remain the most inscrutable. Perhaps that is what hindered my progress for so long. Regardless, the particulars are beyond my present ability to decipher. With time, I am certain I will succeed, but not yet. There are references to forces so primal that we have no frame of reference for them, rolling and churning, or measured and deliberate. The words here have multiple meanings. I must set them aside for now. What is clear is that great powers took shape. How many? There are numbers within numbers, my friends. At first, I thought only 2, until I perceived an infinite array. Oh, the terror of it! But as of late, I have settled on 6. possibly 7. But the last might be an artifact of the geometry, a fractal. I will tell you what I know. That's my favourite line ever in WoW. It's my favourite line ever in WoW. There are numbers within numbers, my friends. At first, I thought only 2, until I perceived an infinite array. Oh, the terror of it. But as of late, I've settled on 6. Maybe 7. That's really interesting, because clearly, well, it seems to me, before I read on, just like reacting before, the thing is finished, which makes me a real streamer. It seems like he is referring to the light and the void as being the 2 that began everything. That fits with Chronicle. And then the 6 would be the rest of the cosmology chart, right? 7 being something very interesting going on. It feels like they're referring to the cosmology here. It certainly seems recognizable for that, right? These 6 forces existed in strife. Well, not strife in the way one such as you or I would see it. Opposition, surely, but whether malignant or benign is unclear. There was imbalance until there was a need for something more. They came together, or were brought together, depending on how one interprets the fractal, and gave form to their design. Forged, scribed, shaped, the exact word is elusive. Each architect gave a portion of themselves, and thus the pattern was drawn. It is from here that the language becomes clearer. Now, I don't think they're not talking about Titans here. They're talking about first ones. What it sounds like to me here is that each cosmology kind of section has its own first one associated with it. That's what it sounds like to me. Each architect gave a portion of themselves, and thus the pattern was drawn. It feels like there's a first one for light, and a first one for, like, fel, and a first one for void, etc., etc. Having read 3 pages of it, that's what it feels like to me. How interesting. With a framework in place, all that we now comprehend came to be, as if reality were nothing more than a fungus growing upon the frame. 6 forces now in balance, and from their intersections arose others, a simple structure growing infinitely more complex. Now do you understand why my translations took such time? Why they still elude me? It grows, it changes, glyphs and geometry and fractals everywhere. This never usually happens. I'll get you a towel. As each emptiness abated and grew fuller, the pattern alone was not enough. Shapes arose within shapes, begotten by the 6 to beget more. Now it grows clearer, more certain. Each layer more fathomable to a meager mind, such as yours. Well, this is really interesting, because what it's suggesting is that the 6 main cosmologies that we know of are the 6 main cosmologies, and maybe they have like a first one like attached to them. But from those 6, maybe 7, sprung like infinite other cosmologies. The cosmology is not just limited to the 6 we know. There are like loads and loads of other cosmologies as well. This is just like top of my head stuff as I'm reading through this. I'm happy to go back and revise any of this stuff, right? But that's what it's making me think, like, off the bat. 6 realms, many intersections, countless fractals. Imbalance? Possibly, but that might be wrong. If 6 equal 1, then what is the other? The one outside the pattern. What indeed? Note, I must return to this chapter later to afford greater clarity. It is possible I possess a propensity to ramble. But I'd really like to know what the elusive one is. Is it Azeroth? Is it our reality? So if I had to guess right now, I would say that the one that eludes him, the one that he can't quite pin down, the one he can't quite put his finger on, might be our reality. Maybe not. Maybe it's this whole new thing. Maybe it's a whole new reality, and that's where the jailer wants to get to. I'd be down with that. I imagine Steve Danusa is super high at work while creating this death and cosmology structure. I know, man. Like, Steve Danusa's got the best job in the world. I don't even care. The known. Before delving deeper into the great mysteries, it is worth framing their wonder within the context of our own existence, what we know of it, at least. It fills me with sorrow that of the many beings I encountered on my travels through the Nimbus, so few possessed any interest beyond their sense of duty. I sought out scholars, philosophers, explorers. I found only simpletons and servitors. This journey took ages, and many times along the way felt fruitless. If only I had known of the existence of the sepulchre. But of course I would not learn of its wonders until much much later, and so I plodded along with the only way I could. I came close to finding wisdom on occasion. Joining a trade expedition to the Bastion, I met an amendable aspirant who told me of a great archive of knowledge, countless records of souls the Kyrians carried across from the mortal realm, as well as collections of their own long-shed memories. The aspirant was even willing to bring me to this repository, until a nosy steward alerted one of the Ascended. My expedition was escorted back to the Anima Gate, warned never to return. Imagining Stephen User watching the stream incognito and having a smug smile on his face. A smug smile, yeah, maybe. Or maybe sitting there like, Tali, I've made it obvious. How can you be so wrong? Some ages later, I secured an invitation to a tournament in the arena of Maldraxxus. While my companions reveled in the sport, I made my way to an ancient library nestled between the great houses. They called it Sepulchre, but I assure you, it was not the one we seek. The horrors I encountered on my journey there still haunt me to this day, but so fixed was I upon my goal that I braved nightmarish constructs and rivulets of toxic plague. When I arrived, the Liches agreed to tolerate my presence for a time, so I sought out their most ancient texts for any history I could glean. Oh, I found histories of great battles fought against the outer planets, of the rise and fall of legendary combatants, of mighty weapons forged and lost. When I asked if there were any older tomes, the implacable Liches told me those were for the eyes of the Primus alone, and I was commanded to leave at once. It was not until I arrived in Oribos that I at last found others who shared my curiosity. Among the Arbiter's attendants was a knowledgeable sort named Karcher, who had seen many ages pass through the course of his duties. Though he was as blindly obedient to his mistress as the rest of his kind, I admit that, standing within the grandeur of the fabled Eternal City, I could understand his devotion. Karcher enjoyed conversing with me, sharing all that he had seen and knowledge that had been passed down by his predecessors. Yet, within all his words, and in the rituals of service that he allowed me to observe, I found little of true value. The city had stood forever, he said. The Arbiter was ever wise and just, he said. Ours was not to question those from beyond the veil, but to facilitate their journeys, he said. It was when Karcher let slip that he had shared similar conversations with an old rival of mine, I vowed she would never thwart me again, that I knew this was a pointless course. I left Karcher to his blathering. The 100 Eyes of Irik-tu. It was upon storming out of the attendant's presence that I stumbled upon a true find. There, passing through Oribos on their way to another destination, I encountered a transcendent soul. They held a form I did not recognize, for they resumed a shape resembling the one they held in the mortal plane. I begged them to speak with me, and they agreed. They said their name was Irik-tu, and though I asked thrice where they had come from, the name of their home was one I could barely understand, let alone repeat or inscribe. It appeared Irik-tu spoke with 4 tongues, and in concert with the clicking of their many legs, I did at times have trouble catching every detail. Irik-tu claimed the place beyond the veil was populated by countless worlds, many inhabited by all manner of beings very different from their own people. When I asked if this world of theirs was rich with anima, Irik-tu assumed an expression I took to be puzzlement, though the 100 eyes of Irik-tu were admittedly difficult to read. The living did not trade in anima, they said. A phrase I asked them to repeat several times to be certain I heard it correctly. Yeah, like, this dude does not even know what our reality is even like. Like, this dude does not even know what the mortal realm kind of consists of. He's never seen it or been there. But I feel like we assume that everyone in the Shadowlands knows what the mortal realm is like, but generally they probably, like, they know it exists, but generally they have about as much knowledge of it as your average mortal on Azeroth has of the Shadowlands, i.e. not really any at all. If they are, like, native to the Shadowlands, like this guy is. No anima? How could their existence truly be so different from our own? It was indeed, Irik-tu assured me. They told me of this realm of mortals where their animaless existence ceased with the terminus of their fragile forms. Irik-tu met their end in a terrible war, they claimed, their home ravaged by the demons of the twisting nether. I nodded in solemn camaraderie, for we all recall the tale of the Burning Legion's assault on Maldraxxus and the terrible cost of the Necrolord's victory. I believe that's the first we've heard of that. I mean, I think we suspected it. We know that Maldraxxus have fought against the Burning Legion in the past. We do know that, and we know that they've sent spies out to spy on the Burning Legion, but we did not know that the Legion actually assaulted Maldraxxus. That's some pretty cool info. I like the sound of that. Ooh! Irik-tu brightened when they recalled the Arbiter's kindness in sending them along the streams to a hive where others of their kind shared a long and pleasant coexistence. After many ages caring for their kin, Irik-tu was ready to venture on, returning to Oribos to marvel at its splendor. Nice insights into the Shadowlands here. Of course, I asked Irik-tu what they knew of the origins of the realm of mortals, but what they told me made little sense. Does every mortal believe in a different tale or fancy? I nodded as they spoke of their thousand-legged god whose eggs brought forth all existence, but soon I grew tired of their quaint fables and bid Irik-tu good journeys. It's really cool. So is that a zone that we haven't been to? The Hive? Or do we think that's Ardenweald? If he knows Maldraxxus, he'd know Ardenweald, right? You can freely choose to move on to a different afterlife once you're satisfied with the first. Yeah, a transcendent soul could well be one that has ascended from the original kind of like covenant they were put into, or transcended, I guess. This guy seems like he's curious, but if things don't line up with what he wants to hear, he's like, nope, I'm out. Yeah, maybe. But then I think he's probably got a good point about this Irik-tu guy and the origin of the universe. So it seemed even the halls of Oribos could not grant me the truths I sought. Mortal souls believed in a myriad of myths that spoke of false gods, while we basked in the splendor of beings of true might. We were blessed to be in the presence of the Arbiter, the Archon, the Winter Queen. So he does know Ardenweald, which suggests that the Hive is not Ardenweald, and that's like there is a Hive zone in the Shadowlands. Interesting. The Sire and the Primus. Until I found a deeper truth on my way to the Sepulchre, and my mind splintered at the fractals. Well, say no more. Okay, well, look, we learned some good stuff there, right? Okay, so here's what I get from that. There are 6 or maybe 7 Cosmology realms, and they are the original ones. And I don't know, but I suspect, by the way it was said, that there is a first one in charge of each realm. Or, at the very least, a first one who formed and ordered one of the realms in its own image. Much like we expect, like, the Titans to, but, like, much, much bigger. So there is a first one who put together the realm of disorder and fell. There is a first one who put together the realm of death. Which, don't forget, the Shadowlands is not part of. The Shadowlands is the Shadowlands. It's a shadow of our reality. The realm of death is completely different. Or if not completely different, a different separate realm from the Shadowlands. There's a first one who might be in charge of the shadow. There's a first one who might be in charge of order. And a first one who might be in charge of life and light. Which is super cool. Like, super, super cool. The jailer is looking for his daddy. I mean, honestly, yeah, kind of, maybe. We've been speculating for a while now that Elune could be a first one. But it could then, therefore, be that if Elune is the life first one, then she is like way above Titan level power, right? It's possible that she literally created the life realm. One would assume if Elune was a first one, then we would find out through the Night Warrior story. Maybe, yeah. Elune might be arcane though. Don't the Druid Moon spell things do arcane damage? Very true. Her kind of general aesthetic is very kind of arcane-y. But yeah, I mean, I think it's quite likely Elune is a first one for sure. But then I thought that the Winter Queen's sister was Ionar, so if Elune is a first one, then her sister, the Winter Queen, would be a first one as well? Nah. You can be born a king. It doesn't mean your brother's a king. When it comes to, like, eternal godlike beings, brother and sister doesn't need to mean exactly what it means for human beings, right? So it just means they're kind of, like, associated. It doesn't necessarily mean they were born of the same thing. Could mean that they were. Doesn't have to mean that, though. It's like, I find it doesn't pay to be too narrow with these definitions. If that is true about Elune and she is a first one, then Xel'atath should really make us clench. Yeah, well, I mean, Xel'atath is nothing like a first one, surely. Xel'atath is like a kind of a wandering trickster. Xel'atath is more like a Loki character. I feel like Xel'atath, if there is like a void society and a void hierarchy, she's like the child of a duke in human terms. She's like the child of a duke, as in her family are like semi-important in void society. She's got no responsibilities or anything, so but she might have later on, but at the moment she's just kind of traveling, seeing what she can see, getting involved in little scrapes and stuff, just basically kind of like going around the cosmos. That's how I see her. It's probably completely wrong, but that's just how I see her in my headcanon. Would you like the game to go back into the old gods direction anytime soon? No. I feel like we have to leave old gods for a bit, mostly because old gods just aren't important in the terms that we're discussing. What are the old gods, really? They're nothing. They're tumors. They don't even exist in void society. they're made and they're fired out like bullets. They're not a part of Void Society at all. What I want to see is Void Society. And I'd like to see Death Society as well, because don't forget, that is different from the Shadowlands. Like, the Shadowlands might be linked to the Death Realm, but it's not the Death Realm. The Shadowlands that we are in right now is very specifically paired with our reality. Not just Azeroth, but our whole reality. And all the different timelines of our reality, like Alternate Draenor. But these cosmologies are not our reality. They all exist in their own realities. The fact that the Shadowlands is part of our reality means it is not part of the Death Realm. It might have incredibly obvious strong links to the Death Realm, but for example, when something from the Disorder side, when something from the Fel dies, it does not go to the Shadowlands, because why would it? It's not part of our reality. Like, the Fel isn't part of our reality. When something from the Light Realm dies, it does not go to the Shadowlands. Why would it? Shadowlands is part of our reality, etc., etc. An exception to that would be the Wild Gods, which do go to Ardenweald, which is interesting, but that's an exception. I think the first one is a very different being, much more grand than the Winter Queen. Well, here's the thing, like, the first ones would have created the Winter Queen. I'm just thinking of things that might be, it's fine. And if they're wrong, I don't care. It's fine, honestly. I have no skin in this game. I have no, like, stock. My reputation is safe. I don't need to kind of be right. It's fine. Could first one be literal or more of a title? Well, if the description of them in the book that we just read is to be taken seriously, they really are kind of very literal. But they are the first ones, not the first things, right? So the first things were the 6 cosmologies. And if we're interpreting it right, and if the narrator that has told us is reliable, the implication, as I gather it from the book, and let me know if you disagree, is that the 6 cosmologies existed, maybe 7, and then the first ones kind of shaped the cosmologies. So the implication is that there is a first one that has kind of shaped each one of the cosmologies. But even more interesting than that is that these are not the only 6 or 7 cosmologies. From these have sprung other parts of the cosmological chart, like infinite parts of the cosmological chart. What this does from a game point of view, quite aside from like a lore point of view, is that it sets up infinite other cosmologies. So not just void worlds or light worlds or fel worlds, but like whole other forces, whole other types of energy beyond light and fel and shadow and death and order and life. Like other ones that they can just make up whenever they want to. I think you're going the wrong direction. I think those things spiral inwards to mortal reality. Yeah, or maybe mortal reality is in the center just because mortals are idiots and they always put themselves in the center. Remember how everyone used to think the sun went round the earth? This cosmology chart is Azeroth-centric, right? Any idea as to why the Titan adjacent beings never mentioned the first ones in them? They seem to be pretty common knowledge, or at least known presence. I mean, you say they're pretty common knowledge, but we've only heard about them since we've been to the Shadowlands. And we know that the Titans don't go to the Shadowlands when they die. So why would they know? Chronicle is from the Titans' point of view in that it's made up of a lot of stuff that the Titans know, but it's not necessarily made up of everything that the Titans know. I can find a Shakespeare play that was written by Shakespeare. Like, I can find Hamlet, but just because I found Hamlet and because I read it, A, doesn't mean I understood Hamlet, and B, doesn't mean I now know all of Shakespeare's plays. Like, if I discovered Hamlet, and I was the first person to discover Hamlet, like, I'm telling you a story from the point of view of Shakespeare, right? I'm telling you what Shakespeare knew, in the same way that Chronicle is from the point of view of the Titans. It doesn't mean the Titans wrote it. It means it's made up of things that people have found, which are very Titan-centric, because Azeroth is very Titan-centric. So, like, I can discover Hamlet, and I can tell you about Denmark from Shakespeare's point of view. But it doesn't mean it's correct. It doesn't mean, like, it's a good description of Denmark or a correct description of Denmark. It doesn't mean Shakespeare had ever even been to Denmark. He probably didn't. And it doesn't mean that I know everything that Shakespeare knows. I found one thing that Shakespeare wrote, and I can tell you his point of view on a couple of things from Hamlet. So in that sense, you're getting Shakespeare's point of view, and the things I'm telling you are told from Shakespeare's point of view, but it's not a complete picture. It's not necessarily one you should, like, you know. Yeah, there's a sense that, like, everyone wants a piece of our reality. Absolutely. And that could be because of the Titans. Because Titans do seem to be born in our reality, but they don't go to the Shadowlands, which is, you know, the death part of our reality. They don't go to the Shadowlands when they die. So why are they born here? That's what I'd like to know. And I'd like to know if the first ones, I want to know if the first one who shaped Disorder which is a bit of an oxymoron, I guess. But, like, okay, is still just hanging out in that realm and, like, ruling it or something. That's how I understood that every realm has a first one. Yeah, that's how I read it as well. And then the countless other realms that kind of sparked off of these 6 don't necessarily have first ones. They're kind of like the Wild West.